All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started, just to respect your time. There might be a few more people trickling in, and I guess I'll give a little bit of a warning that this is going to be a little bit of a quirky section this summer. I guess there's quite a few students that are taking the international residency, which meets on Mondays and Thursdays. So I think there's at least one, maybe as many as 3 students that will take this course at the same time as the international residence course, which means that they'll miss this class whenever there is a conflict. I wish U of R had told me that that was on Mondays, because then I would have said don't put my class on Mondays, but they failed to mention that. So we'll see. The ones that are taking it are concerned, and they've already said that if it's too much or they don't feel like they're able to really participate in this class, they might end up dropping this one. But so you might see some people come in and out and wonder what the heck is going on, but we'll try to manage that. And then of course during the summer, I think the summer is always a little bit awkward with vacations and travel and all that. So I'm the easiest going professor you'll ever have, because I'm as busy as hell, and so I get it. So if you all have work, if you got vacations, if you got stuff to do, I'm going to videotape everything, and I'll post it, and so you guys can always catch up if you miss a class. If you're absent a lot, I might have to ask for some supplemental submission just to sort of prove that you're keeping up with the reading, keeping up with the course material, but I'm not worried about it. So having said that, welcome to the Young Leader. This course is a new course. It's a course that I developed with Professor Raggio here. And you know, if you take business school classes, eventually you end up taking a leadership course. And that can mean a lot of different things. Leadership is a very deep subject. If you go on to the Harvard Business Review, there's cases and cases and cases, and there's tons of articles. So you sort of have to pick what aspect of leadership you really want to speak to. And so for me, I tried to pick something which was a little bit unique and a little bit more practical. That's my big thing. My big thing is that business school should be practical. I don't like all the textbooks. I don't like all the theory. I don't like all the PhDs who haven't worked in the real world. And as long as I've been an adjunct here, that's been my take on subject matter. My subject matter has to be very practical to your day-to-day. If it's just textbook stuff, then I don't really find that's going to translate particularly well to your job. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through some shifts that you need to make when you become a new leader, when you come from being either a specialist or a line manager or a department manager to becoming an enterprise manager, and you have responsibility for the whole group. There's some very fundamental things that you need to do, different ways of thinking, different ways of acting and behaving. So those are the areas that we're going to explore. Is this working? So first, I'll tell you a little bit about me. My name is Matt Abood. I'm an adjunct professor here. I've been doing this for about 3 years. But my real job and my day-to-day job is that I'm the president of a company called Hydro Aluminum Metals. We are actually based in Baltimore. I was living in Maryland for about 7-8 years, and then was traveling a lot and started having a family and found it hard to do both. And so I'm from here originally, and was able to work out an arrangement where I moved to Richmond with my family, and I'm still up in Baltimore, not every day, but quite a bit. I'm going there tomorrow, for example. And for the last 7-8 years, I've been doing this sort of commuting thing. And it's hard, but my family loves it here, and I love it here. And anyone here from Baltimore? Okay, good, because Baltimore stinks. So I didn't like it very much up there. So happy to be here. I have an economics degree from UVA. Graduated in 1997, so you can do the math and figure out how old I am. I got an MBA from the Columbia Business School up in New York City, concentrated in leadership and management. And like you, I'm still a lifelong learner, so I'm actually in the process of getting a graduate certificate in human resources. I wrote that wrong. Strategic human resources through Cornell's online program, which is very interesting. Before I do what I do, when I first got out of school, I worked here in town for a company called TS&W, Thompson, Siegel & Walmsley. They're a money management company. And I was just like a kind of a young junior research analyst, researching stocks and portfolio management, that type of thing. Went through this pretty awful program called CFA. I think there's a lot of people here at Richmond that go through that, all those guys that sit up in that front room with all the computer screens and the Bloomberg ticker. I'd like to give them some advice, but they're not asking my opinion. But like I said, I'm from here originally. I'm married 18 years, and this is the big one. I have 5 kids. The oldest one is 13, and the youngest one is 5. So I'm super busy, super busy. So between the job, traveling, between the big family, and then doing extracurricular things like this, I'm super busy. So you'll hear me, I guess the way I make myself feel better is I joke about it a lot, so you'll hear me make a lot of jokes. But I guess that's how that's my therapy, that's how I get through it. But it's a lot of fun. So I'll tell you a little bit about my company, Hydro Aluminum. I'm the president of the US division, but we are a Norwegian company headquartered in Oslo, Norway. And the history of the company is interesting. It's about a 100-year-old company, and it's been in a lot of different lines of business. It was actually originally in fertilizer. So if you go back to the turn of the last century, the turn of the 1900s, Norway was a very poor country. And if you can imagine, their big industries were farming and fishing. You know, fishing, I kind of get it. But farming, I mean, if you've ever been there, the climate is not a great farming climate, so I don't think they were good farmers. But one thing that they really did have was they had all these waterfalls. Norway is known for having these deep fjords, these sort of big like rivers that kind of come into the country. And so this one guy decided that he wanted to harness the power of these rivers, and so he knew that you could make electricity from damming rivers. But then they were just trying to figure out what could they make with all this energy. And what they decided to do was make fertilizer. So the way you make fertilizer is you actually have to extract nitrogen from the air. Nitrogen is the most abundant element in air. But to get it into like a powder form, it goes through this very complicated process. And anyway, that was the foundations of the company. They were extracting nitrogen from the air to make fertilizers. We got into oil and gas, we got into some electricity generation, we eventually got into metals, both aluminum and magnesium. We had all sorts of other ancillary businesses like salmon farming and chocolate, believe it or not. When I joined the company in 2003, we were metals, aluminum and magnesium, we were fertilizers, and we were oil and gas. Today, we are just aluminum and power production. And I won't bore you with all these details, but basically I sit right here in the middle of the value chain. I'm in what they call metal markets. So we mine ore out of the earth, we use our own self-produced energy, we create original aluminum, and then we cast it into things and process it downstream. And so my division sits right here in the middle, and I'm responsible for two production facilities. One is in a town called Henderson, Kentucky, which is near Evansville, Indiana, across the river. And one is in Commerce, Texas, which is near Dallas. And we have a little technology lab up in Michigan and our office here in Baltimore. So I'm traveling a lot. I go visit my plants once a quarter. I visit a lot of customers. We cover all the coasts. I'm always at industry conferences or other events. I'm in Washington, D.C. a lot for lobbying reasons. So you'll hear a lot of aluminum stories, I think, which probably everyone will sort of fall asleep except for Alex, because Alex is also in the aluminum business. So he'll, in fact, I might buy some scrap a little bit later from Alex. And our products are in some well-known end products. So we provide a lot of material into the Tesla. We also provide metal into the Corvettes. We make metal that goes into a lot of different ladder systems, Polaris snowmobiles. One of our big customers put up all the curtain walls, they call it, on the outside of the Dallas Cowboys football stadium. All sorts of things. So it's basic industries, it's metals and mining, it's industrial, but even for someone who went to a New York City business school, it's really cool. I really enjoy it. It's It's nice to sort of see something tangible that you produce at the end of the day. So I've had a good 15-year career and really enjoy it. And actually, so here's one of your business school colleagues. This is Duncan. Duncan did a capstone project for me, and he is at my Henderson, Kentucky plant in this picture. So you can see that he's standing in front of these long metal bars. We call those extrusion billets. So he's standing in our finished goods yard in front of a stack of billet. Before I go any further, I think maybe we ought to do a little bit of a round of introductions in here. I a little bit take for granted that everybody knows everybody, but I've learned that that's not necessarily true, that you guys can run in parallel courses and never really cross over sometimes. So if it's okay, I'll start over here and let's just go around the room and tell me your name and what you do, who you work for, what your job function is.
All right. I'm Alex Hudson. I work at Philip Morris. I work in quality at not the big factory on 95, but it's in Hopewell. We do, it's like a paper making facility.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been there?
Almost 2 years.
First job out of undergrad?
Well, this is my second job in the company. I was a lab tech first and worked my way up.
Okay, good.
I'm Alex Stratton. I work for a company called Stratton Metals. We're a scrap processing company. I'm a metals trader and forklift driver, whatever.
Julian, want to go up here?
I'm Julian Shaw. I work for ACA. I do business development in healthcare, basically.
I am Lauren Martin. I am hopefully matriculating in the fall, so just checking out what I'm getting myself into. I work for Virginia Hospital Association. I run operations for their foundation.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kellen, prospective student. I work for a technology company out in San Francisco called Diaby Solutions, and I manage their PR and marketing.
Very good.
I'm Jeff Otway. I work at Capital One. I lead strategy for our ACH operations group. And I've been there for about 7 years now.
Okay.
My name is Michael Rowe. I work for GE. I manage the accounts, most hardware accounts in the United States, and pretty much every automotive account in Canada. I'm just sitting in right now to get an idea. Initially, I was planning on coming in the fall, but I had a conversation with my wife the other night, and we have a 7-month-old at home, and it's already a living hell, so I really feel like I should give a little bit more time. So
get out of the house more.
French.
No.
My name is Selena Shiosha. I own my own company right now, and what I specialize in is accounting projects, we'll say, for HOAs. So
Okay.
most recently and currently I'm working for an Infinity Association on a project where we've identified $500,000 a year for missing revenue they're not billing out. So,
Oh, wow.
and I have 3 kids. So
Good to go.
Don't stop you. You're going to be awake anyway, so you might as well have something to read.
3 days. So.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you it gets easier, but little kids, little problems. Big kids, bigger problems.
Yeah,
but
I'm afraid of having a teenager in the house. I'm not a patient person.
well, this is good because we have somebody who works, for themselves. We have somebody who works for a family company. We have a couple people who work for big Fortune 500 types, some nonprofits. So it's a good mix, and that's great. So about this class. I think the overarching theme of this class is this old saying that what got you here won't get you there. I think this is the classic dilemma in leadership, is that oftentimes the skills and the accomplishments that get you recognized as being a high performer or a fast mover or a high potential aren't necessarily the same set of skills and responsibilities that will take you up to that leadership profile. There's this old term, the Peter Principle. You get promoted up until your level of incompetence. A lot of times the incompetence part has to do with the leadership part. You might be the world's best accountant and you're accelerating through your accounting firm, and then you become a manager and then suddenly you don't do so well. Or I can point to my father-in-law, who was a great architect. He's a wonderful architect. He's won tons of awards, but when it comes to him managing his company, I hear all the stories. He's not the world's greatest leader or manager in the world. So these are the topics that we're going to have to discuss to help you guys. Class is going to be Mondays, 6:15 to 9:45. I promise I will try never to go to 9:45. I don't want to be here. I know y'all don't want to be here. So I'm going to target 9:30, and if we can even break a little bit before then, I think we're going to stuff a lot of information in this time, so I don't feel bad about cutting out a bit early. Also, I do thank you guys for answering the doodle poll on the makeup class. It was actually tied between keeping it on Monday, in which case we probably couldn't meet in the business school. We'd have to find just a different place to meet, or Tuesday. It was an equal number of votes for both Monday and Tuesday. I'm trying to bring in a guest speaker that week, one of those days, and so I'll check with her to see if she prefers Monday or Tuesday, and whatever she prefers, we'll go with that. And if that means some of y'all have to miss because of conflicts, I understand. It's again, one more reason why in the future I don't think I'm going to ask this class to be on Mondays. If every year there's a Memorial Day conflict, I'm not quite sure why they do it. But there will be 7 classes in total. My intention is to be here for all of them. I do travel a lot, but I've tried to craft my schedule over the summer that I'm here on Mondays. I think last year when I did the same session, I think I had to miss one. Didn't I? There was one that we did when we were doing the the simulation. Yeah.
I think that was the only one.
Yeah, that was the only one. I was sitting in the Dulles Air France lounge about to take a European flight, and I was on the computer and my class was doing this online simulation, so that was pretty fun. It worked out pretty well. But my intention is to be here all 7 classes, but fair warning, it would not be unusual for me to get a phone call and say, hey, we need you in Norway next week. That happens. And if that happens, then probably what I'll do is I'll come in early and I'll basically set up the camera like this and I'll pre-record a lecture and I'll post it and just say, watch it at your leisure. But I hope that doesn't happen. Just a little bit of a brief outline of how I expect to do this. We're going to go for about 3 hours each session with some breaks, several breaks in between. But the way I try to do it is we go over some reading that I'll have assigned, so you'll come into class prepared with some readings or some cases, and we'll spend the first third of the class going over that and reviewing the critical points. And then the middle section will be just a lecture about the content for the day and a lot of hopefully class discussion. And then I'm going to try to bring in a guest speaker almost every session. So after this one, we'll have 6 more sessions. I'm going to try to get at least 4 and maybe even a 5th if there's one person in particular I'm really trying to track down. But she's up in Charlottesville, so I got to get her down to Richmond. But if I can get her, then that would make 5. So I think they'll be very interesting. And I'm not giving them a lot of direction on what to do. I want them to come in and just share some leadership experience with you guys. So on the one hand, I'm a little bit taking a risk that they come in and just don't stay on topic. But I know all these folks pretty well. I've coached them up a little bit, so I think what they'll have to say will be interesting and valuable. And then the benefit is really you get to ask a lot of questions. I did that with the last class I taught. It wasn't this same class, it was a different class, but I think people appreciated hearing from practitioners here in Richmond or in the business world. So that's the plan. For grading, class participation, of course. I mean, that's really where we get a lot of the benefit is you guys talking with each other as colleagues and cohorts. There's going to be a case that I'm going to assign, and I'm going to ask you guys to answer questions and be very thoughtful about it, and that'll be a turn-in case. That'll probably be around week 3 or 4. There's going to be a memo that you'll get more details on. It won't be long. It'll be maybe a 2 to 3 page memo. That'll be toward the second half of the course, probably week 5. And then for the last session, you'll turn in a project. What I'm going to probably do is start assigning elements of that project as early as next week, week 2, meaning you don't have to do it until week 7, and you can just ram it out you know, 3 days before it's due, and that's fine. But if you want, you can start doing it bit by bit, just so that you can spread out the work a little bit. I've been in some courses where they've done that, and I've just appreciated being able to work ahead if possible. Yeah, but at the end of the day, I want this class to be very practical and useful for you guys. You know, the reason why I do this in general is because when I went to business school, I found that I liked the classes taught by adjuncts much more than I liked the classes taught by the tenured professors. You know, there's just something about having that real world experience which that I really appreciated, and I said to myself, if I ever get in a position where I'm able to do that, I'd like to do that. And I enjoy it. I think it's fun. It's I learn a lot from you guys. I take a lot of what I get out of the class back to my job and my company, so it's actually a benefit for me. So it's great. They actually pay me, but I'm the one who's really benefiting a lot. So I enjoy it, and I hope to stay in touch. I've been able to stay in touch with several of my students as they've progressed on through the program and out of the program. I see a lot of them around town, actually, out at soccer fields and at various activities. I've served as a bit of a mentor to one young woman who actually has transitioned into a new job. So I was just giving her some advice as she was going through that. So I really do think of this as just being one more network for us. So you guys feel free to reach out to me, email, text message, whatever. I'm pretty much on call all the time. Any questions before we kind of dig into the subject matter? Nothing? Oh, you guys are easy. There's donuts up here, by the way, so Julian requested donuts, so we got donuts. Okay, so one of the articles that I asked you guys to read was called The Big Shift. And that was really the article that was the platform for me to design this class around. I actually read this article in a Harvard Business Review magazine, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. And it was right as I was becoming an enterprise leader myself. And I read it, and I thought it made tremendous sense. And I kept it. I literally think I was in an airport just looking for something to read on an airplane. And I bought this magazine, and I read this article, and it struck me so much that, you know, I kept it, and it's been on my shelf for a long time. And when Dr. Raggio asked me if I could teach a leadership class, this was the first thing that I thought of. I thought this would be a really neat way to frame a 7-week class, because there are 7 what they call seismic shifts. So what we're going to try to do is really take each shift and use that as a class topic and kind of go one by one. Some are a little bit light, I would say. The first one we're going to talk about today, I would argue, was a little bit light when it comes to the content. There's a couple that are a bit deeper, but in general, I just thought they would be a good canvas to bring in some other practical elements. Like at some point, I'd like to talk to you guys about giving a good performance review, especially to an employee who at once upon a time was a colleague, like a direct colleague, or even your boss. I don't know if any of you guys have been in that situation, but I have. I at some point, I became the boss of somebody who had been my boss. It's pretty awkward, especially to give like a performance review. So there's lots of real cool practical things that I hope we can touch on. So today, later, this is the first one we're going to talk about, from specialist to generalist. And the way they define that is to understand the mental models, the tools, and the terms and key business functions, and develop templates for evaluating the leaders of those functions. The second one is analyst to integrator, to integrate the collective knowledge of cross-functional teams and make appropriate trade-offs to solve complex organizational problems. From tactician to strategist, to shift fluidly between the details and the larger picture. And you know, this is one in particular I think we can really dig into. I think in all of our day-to-day jobs we think very tactically, but once you become a leader, it's really more about the long term, the long road. It's not the battle, it's the war. So that'll be a good one to talk about. Bricklayer to architect, basically how to analyze and structure organization systems so that there's, you get rid of the silos, you get people talking to each other, and you get alignment. The fifth one is problem solver to agenda setter, defining the problems that the organization should focus on. This is a good one, warrior to diplomat, to proactively shape the environment in which the business operates, and to really be almost like a politician, to be a diplomat, to really try to build relationships and to bridge differences. And the last one is a supporting cast member to lead role. So in the article that you guys read, did all this kind of ring true to you? Did anybody have any thoughts or reflections on the big picture on the article? I mean, you guys probably didn't read the article who are coming in, but maybe you did. I see. I did. What did people think about the article itself?
So I liked it, obviously. But I see myself obviously on the first side of it, like the warrior supporting cast.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of see myself going down the road already, and I'm like trying to figure out how I could change to be the diplomat or the lead role afterwards. And I saw myself thinking in that context the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Selena?
Before I started my own business, I worked at Woodley Community Association in Swimming Rapids Club and transitioned into the leadership role there as the CFO, which 2 minutes as a consultant prior to me. What I found so fascinating about this article was the problem solver to agenda setter for, I don't know if it seems like every HOA I worked at, but in particular Woodley, I think that getting management and the board of directors and the staff to, instead of chasing whatever fires in front of them, following your game plan was so instrumental to turning around the entire organization financially, culturally. I mean, just in so many ways that I think it's so important for anyone who's going to work in a company to really just kind of hone in on, because I think that could really truly cause an entire, if the culture of the company doesn't embrace that they're going to set their own agenda, it really can be the collapse of the company. Yeah. Versus some of the other ones, it's the collapse of you personally. I mean, when you're working at an HOA and you're trying to turn that around financially, you're talking about 4,000 people's homes, their biggest investment.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, it's just that one really, like, I put like an explanation of.
That's a great one. Very good.
For us.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that. Julian, what do you think?
I mean, there's a lot of things in this article that was kind of obvious, but I like how it made it into little categories, so you can think about, individually how each characteristic that you had, like how does that have to shift when you become a leader. So I like how they kind of explain the details of that.
So let me ask you a question. If you think of yourself as a person who could one day become a leader, so you need to master these functions on the right, you need to be more of a generalist, an integrator, strategist, an architect, is it a bad thing when you're not there yet, when you're Alex and you're 2 years into your career? Is it a bad thing to be extremely focused on the left side? Will you get labeled if you're a specialist and an analyst and a tactician and a bricklayer? Like, do you think that's the wrong strategy for someone?
No, I mean, I think you have to have both. You need to be able to kind of empathize with that side and be good at that, because as you transition to leader, you're leading people who are more of a specialist. You're leading people who are more of an analyst.
This is just a commentary. I was in the Army, and I just remember if we got a new lieutenant, they had no experience whatsoever, but they always wanted to just assume that leadership role, even though they've never been a bricklayer, but they just wanted to jump into an architect. And I just remember the level of disrespect and the level of just blowing them off was always high. It was like, hey, they want to go this way. Let's just say we didn't, do this. Like,
that's
you really
great.
need to have the experience of a bricklayer or a tactician. Otherwise, your skills as a strategist or architect are going to mean absolutely jack.
You're right. You're right. Someone else did.
But I also think it's important as you're growing to show that you're a really good bricklayer so that you're in respect. But when you're speaking to your manager, be empathetic, as Julian said, like, I think that word is perfect, to to the architect viewpoint. Because
Yeah.
so often as a manager, you're like talking to an employee who just doesn't get it, and you like, how do I get you to look outside of this little box right now
Yep.
to gain their buy-in so that
Yeah.
you're acting as a
Yeah.
better leader, right? So I mean, it's great to just show openness to that,
Mhm.
but to still be the bricklayer, because when you're the bricklayer, you gotta get that job
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And I mean, together with empathy, if you're an enterprise leader, you couldn't say that you probably worked in every single department.
No. No.
What every single one person does, but be able to understand, empathize with, where's that word over there? Mental models, tools, and terms.
Mhm.
That's really important to be able to understand that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And my little story, and I'll get into that a little bit later, is that when I got hired into my job, full disclosure, I just think I was built a little bit to be more on this right side. Just my natural personality. I've always been someone who liked coaching, who liked mentoring, who liked teaching, thought big picture, kind of strategy oriented. Early on in my career, I struggled because I was always trying to lean that way, and they're like, dude, you're a 24-year-old recent college graduate, like, do your job, like, don't, you're a finance associate, like, crunch the numbers, like, work on the spreadsheet, don't pontificate about big marketing plans. And so, I mean, I have to admit that I struggled. I wasn't really built that well to do the thing on the left, and I'm actually a little bit fortunate that I was able to get to where I am pretty quickly. But I definitely see that for people like me who are a little bit unstructured, who are a little bit not process-oriented people, it's hard to buckle down and achieve in that, those first 2 or 3 jobs out of school where you're expected to just deliver performance and be a private or be a, I'm not sure what the Army term would be, but I'm not a general yet. I have to earn my way up there. So I would say no, absolutely. If you're a good bricklayer, by God, be a great bricklayer. Get noticed, get recognized. As Julian said, have some empathy for then one day needing to be an architect. But don't just poo-poo, say, oh, I'm not going to be a bricklayer because I'm going to be an architect. That's not how companies work. I mean, you need to deliver results in your current job in order to get noticed and get fast-tracked. So that was one reflection of mine on this article, was to not minimize being on the left. Everyone has to start there. Some people are better at it and should probably stay there. People who want to be leaders need to be able to do the things on the right. Some people maybe are better out of the box already on the right, but there has to be this shift. So that's okay. Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about credibility, earning credibility. And I like what you said about somebody who walks in fresh without having been a bricklayer or an analyst and start giving orders. People who've been there, they just sort of go, okay, who's this new person? What do they know? We did a case last year. It was about a case about a woman that was trying to lead a change management program, and she was new to the company, but was high level, had the ear of the CEO, proposed a change program, got buy-in from the bosses, and so then she sent out an email to the whole field saying, I've talked to the boss, and he agrees, and he supports this, so let's do this. And everyone in the field went, who the hell is this person? We're not going to listen to you. We've been doing this for 15 years. We've been successful at what we're doing. What? And I think that, and so that was in a little bit of a different context. We were talking about change management, but it's the same thing. She had no credibility. They didn't know who she was. Even if she referenced the boss, hey, I talked to the CEO, or Tim, and Tim said we should do this. They said, we don't care. So in order to move into these roles, you have to have credibility. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. So right now, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about the second article, and then we'll move into the actual specialist and generalist. So, but let's take, what time is it? It's 6:50. Let's come back at 7 o'clock. Okay, quick break.